Today the topic is the elbow joint, proximal and distal radius. Elbow joint basically present between ulna and humerus, whereas the new name is given as the humero-ulnar joint because it is the articulation between the trochlear notch of the ulna and the trochlea of the humerus. And radius, which is articulating with the capitulum, is not the basically forming a joint. It is just an articulation that it rotates around the capitulum, head of the radius. So actual joint which is binding the two bones together is humerus, trochlea, and the ulna, which is the uh, its olecranon and coronary process forming the trochlear notch in which the trochlea of the humerus fit. First thing about the joint is the type of joint, which is asked very favorably. What type of joint it is? It is actually asked from the general anatomy. It is a complex hinge joint. Hinge joint usually that is the described is it is a joint which is resemble the hinges of the door. Door actually open to one side, to and fro, to one side and then the other reverse of that. Just like the elbow, which forearm does not pass posteriorly. It comes to the in line of the forearm with the arm and then it bend forward, like a door. The hinges of the door, because it resembles a hinge joint, and the two pivot joints. Pivot joints are between the capitulum and head of the radius and between the proximal radius and ulna. These are the two joints. That the capitulum and the upper part of the head of the radius, which is concave. Capitulum is convex. They fit with each other or articulate with each other, and they form the one joint. Second is the proximal radioulnar joint. These are the two pivot joints. So they are working together because the capsule of the elbow joint is attached to the borders of the upper border of the annular ligament. So we can say that the elbow joint infection that also passes to the superior radioulnar joint or the radiohumeral joint or humeroradial joint. So that is the head of the radius is looking into the joint, you can say. That is the looking into the joint. An arc of 150 degree of flexion extension is possible. This joint is uniaxial joint. It is uniaxial. And you know that the uniaxial joint can perform the two movements only, uh, any two movements on one axis, because it is a transverse axis. So two movements are possible, that is flexion and extension, uniaxial, and never say that it is a biaxial or multiaxial. No, the total movement is 150 degree uh, toward the flexion, you can say. If the arm and forearm we keep it in straight line, it is 180. Make an angle of 180. Arm and forearm. When the limb is straight downward. If you flex it, first it becomes 90 degree, then it further move upward, total by 150. At 150, the muscles of the arm and the muscles of the forearm they come in contact with each other So no further movement is possible beyond 150 because the muscle they come in contact with each other of arm and forearm and they does not permit further more than 1 degree. So flexion or that we say okay, it is the total movement is 150 degree. Hinge joint by definition, many time the student doesn't describe the what do you mean by they always saying hinges of the door. Hinges of the door is not the definition of the hinge joint. The hinge joint by definition is that in which these are the words which are used. Geometry of the articular surfaces or shape of the articular surfaces is such that only to and fro movement is possible. So they are so made. Hinges also like this that permit the to and fro movement of the door. So uh, it is not answer that hinge joint is the hinges of the door. Answer is that in which the geometry of the articular surfaces is such that only to and fro movement is possible. It resembles the here you can use the word hinges of the door. It resembles and not the answer that hinge joint is hinges of the door. It is the surfaces that is the trochlear notch and trochlea. Their shape is such that they permit to and fro movement only. Articular surfaces. The humerus has two articular surfaces, trochlea of the humerus and the capitulum. Trochlea is asymmetrical with long medial margin. This is the long medial margin downward by 6 mm, that is downward, as compared to the lateral side. This is the what we say the medial flange of the trochlea is downward, and this downward projection of the long medial flange is responsible for later on the carrying angle. We'll talk next. That is the carrying angle. Here is the that is the shown is the trochlear notch. That is this one is the trochlear notch. This one is the trochlea. Here you can see that this one is the trochlea and this is the notch that is fitting into it. And here is the head of the radius. This is the capitulum. The superior surface of the head of radius is concave and that fit into the in that fit into the uh, this trochlea, this capitulum. Trochlear notch, you can see that this medial flange is downward as compared to this lateral border or lateral flange. This is downward like this, and it pushes the ulna when extension is done toward the laterally, making an angle of 17 degree, which is the carrying angle. Here, ulna come in alignment that is the same line as that of humerus during flexion, but in extension it is pushed towards laterally by this medial flange, and that is responsible for making an angle between the long axis of the humerus and long axis of the ulna, which is 17 degree angle that is pushed towards laterally. So that is name and responsibility of the medial flange is that is causing the carrying angle. Carrying angle is important because that to carry something. When the forearm is pushed towards one side, one can carry the bucket of water. That is, you can divide the bucket of water into two halves, medial and lateral half, Medial half that is accommodated between the hand and the leg, and the lateral half is outerward, is already outer. So while carrying a bucket full of water, one can easily walk because the forearm is lower limb, away from the lower limb, and then bucket is not touching the leg while walking, and its medial half is accommodated between the deviated forearm and the leg. So that is the importance of the carrying angle. Name is given carrying angle. One can carry anything on it. And this is due to medial flange, which pushes the ulna toward the laterally by 17 degree in extension. This is the trochlea, and this is covered over by this articular cartilage. Similarly, this trochlear notch is also covered with this below articular cartilage. This is also covered with articular cartilage, and trochlea is the this is the uh, concave in upper part from medial to lateral. This is the concave to the upper part. Central is that is narrow, and the lateral side they are broader. Similarly, the central part of the trochlear notch, this is also narrow. This is a projecting forward, and lateral side of the notch are the deeper. Articular cartilage provide the that is prevent the friction rub while during the movement, painless joint, and the easy spread of the synovial fluid, which occur, and soundless joint. Joint doesn't produce any sound due to presence of the articular cartilage. No pain occur during the movements of the joint, and the easy spread of synovial fluid on this glossy surface of the silent cartilage. Trochlea is concave in transverse plane but convex in anteroposterior plane. Anteriorly and posteriorly to you go, it is convex, but transversely it is concave. Surface is covered with hyaline cartilage. Humeral capitulum is convex, and that fit into the concavity of the articular surface of the radial head. That fit into the concavity of the articular surface of the radial head. Trochlear notch of the ulna is covered by hyaline cartilage, is made up of olecranon and coronoid process. The capsule, it is attached, next is the capsule of the joint attached proximally, that is above, in front of the medial epicondyle, and, keep it one thing that the medial and lateral condyle, they are out of capsule while you are drawing on the, if you are asked about the capsule attachment. So keep these two epicondyles medial lateral because the flexor extensor group of muscle, there are a lot of muscle they are attached to the epicondyle. So their muscle attachment is not intracapsular. So these two epicondyle they are kept out, and the humerus above the coronoid and radial fossa. This one is the radial fossa above the capitulum. This is the uh, coronoid fossa above the trochlea. Yeah, this is the trochlea. Above is the coronoid fossa. Above the capitulum, that is radial fossa. So your drawing is that this medial epicondyle is out. Start from the capsule above the fossa, margins of the fossae, then to the medial side of the lateral epicondyle and go back. On the back, that is the from lateral condyle, it is above the olecranon fossa, and then out is the medial condyle. So this is attachment above the olecranon fossa, anteriorly attachment above the two fossae, that is the coronoid and the radial fossa. To keep two epicondyle out. This capsule is responsible for binding through the trochlea. On the trochlea, it is attached to the margins of the coronoid or the trochlear notch, margin of the trochlear notch. That is above is the this this is the olecranon, and below is the coronoid. This is the on each on side of the margins of the olecranon or all of the notch margins. But on the radial side, it is attached to the annular ligament upper border, so that radius can articulate with the capitulum. This passes over the upper margin of the annular ligament all around. It distally below to the edges of the ulnar coronoid process and annular ligament. It blends with the ulnar collateral ligament medially and radial collateral ligament laterally. These ligaments which extend from the epicondyles to the ulna and radius, so that this capsule blends here with the ulnar collateral and radial collateral ligaments. Next is the ligaments of the joint. There are two: ulnar collateral ligament and the radial collateral ligament. Here is shown that this is the attachment of the capsule, that is above the olecranon fossa. This epicondyle, you can see the out of this capsule. This blue shade is the attachment of the capsule. It is attached below is the margin of this trochlear notch, that is the olecranon margins and coronoid margins. Here you can see that fibers fan out downward to the annular ligament. It covers the annular ligament all around, and similarly on this side, that it is attached anterior to the coronoid process and the annular ligament. Annular ligament. Here is seen from epicondyle to the radial collateral ligament. Here is seen from epicondyle of the this medial epicondyle up to the ulna. This is the ulnar collateral ligament. You can see over here, and this one, this is the annular ligament that is surrounding the head of the radius. This one, it is a band which surrounds the head of the radius. Ulnar collateral ligament. This triangular ligament consists of thick anterior band, posterior band, and inferior band. There is the three bands from epicondyle, that is the medial epicondyle. It passes as one band, anterior band, another is the posterior band. But the inferior band binds the base of the two bands like this transversely. It is not arising from the medial epicondyle. From the medial epicondyle, two bands are passing. Okay, but inferior band binds this one base of the posterior band with the base of anterior band together. So apex is attached to the anterior aspect of the medial epicondyle. This apex is attached on the medial side of the epicondyle. Posterior band, its apex is attached to the back of the medial epicondyle. It arises from the back. So anterior band from the anterior aspect of the medial epicondyle, and the posterior band from the posterior aspect of the medial, both from the medial epicondyle. But location is different. Anterior from anterior side, posterior from posterior side. The posterior band of the apex is attached back of the medial epicondyle. Distal attachment below is to the medial margin of the olecranon. Posterior band is attached to the medial margin of the olecranon. Inferior band inferior band between the olecranon and the coronoid processes. That is it is extending from olecranon to posterior. Anterior band extend from the medial epicondyle to medial coronoid border. Anterior band which extend from the medial epicondyle anteriorly to the medial coronoid border. To the medial coronoid border. The radial collateral ligament is attached on the lateral epicondyle and to the annular ligament. Below is the annular ligament, above is the lateral condyle. Blood supply is derived from the anastomosis around the elbow joint. This one is the anterior band from anterior aspect of the medial epicondyle to the coronoid process, and this one is the posterior band which is attached to the from the epicondyle to the olecranon, and this is the inferior band which is connecting together the two transverse band ligament. The anterior band shown posterior bundle. This one is the medial epicondyle. Innervation. Posterior part of the capsule by ulnar nerve and the medial cutaneous nerve of forearm. That is the posterior part of the capsule. Actually, you divide the capsule into ulnar half and the radial half, which is toward the radius or toward the ulna. The here you can say ulnar side. Ulnar side जो है posteriorly by the ulnar nerve and medial cutaneous nerve of forearm. और anterior part जो है of the ulnar side by the median and musculocutaneous nerve, because the median nerve is passing anterior to the capsule and the musculocutaneous also passing. So because the ulnar nerve that is passing behind the medial epicondyle, so median and so that supply, because it passes behind the medial epicondyle, ulnar nerve supply posterior part of the capsule plus medial cutaneous nerve of forearm which is passing to the forearm, a branch of the medial cord of brachial plexus. This is passing to the posterior aspect of the medial side of the forearm. Also give twigs to the ulnar side. So divide the capsule into ulnar half and the radial half. Ulnar half is further divided into anterior and posterior part. The radial half is further divided into anterior and posterior part. The similarly, so you will say that ulnar half, anterior part, ulnar nerve and medial cutaneous nerve of posterior part by the median and musculocutaneous nerve. Radial side laterally both anterior and posterior part by the radial nerve. Musculocutaneous also give few fibers to posterior part, ulnar side, radial side. Musculocutaneous also give both anterior and posterior part mainly by the radial nerve, radial side, and musculocutaneous also give fibers to posterior part, radial side. Movement, uniaxial joint, two movements. Movements are flexion extension, which are both approximately arc of 150 degree. As shown, you bend the arm, this is a straight arm, and it is 180 degree here. Then you bend the forearm 90 degree, and you can further bend, and it is 150 degree. You can further bend. This is the arm, and this is the forearm. Flexion is movement when two bent. By definition, one should know okay, what is flexion. When the two mental surfaces of the forearm and arm come in contact with each other. Here the generally we say the flexion is the moment in which two ventral surfaces they come in contact or approximate to each other or come near to each other. But in this case, in elbow joint, the forearm and arm they come in contact with each other. And in elbow, the ventral surface of the forearm and arm they come in contact with each other. Muscle responsible for flexion, so that is total 150-degree flexion. And reverse is the 150-degree extension, you can say, from flexion to extension. Responsibility for muscle responsible for flexion are brachialis, which is anteriorly attached to the humerus and then to the coronoid process, and the biceps brachii to the radial tuberosity and crossing the joint anteriorly, and the brachioradialis, which is the also playing its role in mid-prone position. It is flexor as well as extensor of the elbow. That is, in both movement it is active in mid-prone position, brachioradial, because it also passes from the humerus to the radius. Though because it crosses the joint, this is the brachioradialis. This is the what the shown is the flexion, which is the 90 degree at the moment. Biceps is responsible and brachialis responsible. And this is the brachioradialis, which is shown above is the biceps, which is the and the brachialis below, and the this is the brachioradialis. Three muscles are shown responsible for flexion. Brachioradial work more in mid-prone position. A gaze resistance flexion of the forearm also contribute. So resistance when you are carrying some weight or uh, from with the hand and that is carrying up the it provide the assistance in the flexion. Extension is the movement in which two dorsal surfaces come in contact or approximate to each other. This is the definition of extension. In elbow, dorsal surface of the forearm and arm approximate to each other because the dorsal surface of the forearm and arm does not contact with each other in full extension. When the arm is straight, that is the full extension. So they come closer to each other. This is the reverse of flexion. And when you reverse it, it is again 150-degree total arc, but arm becomes straight. So dorsal surfaces from flexion to extension, they are coming near to each other, not the in contact with each other. Muscle responsible extension, triceps and coneus, as well as gravity. Yeah, that means which if from flexion, if you leave the arm without the contraction of even muscle, it will fall down and become straight under gravity. After the elbow is the proximal radial joint. Proximal radial joint is between the head of radius and the radial notch on the ulna. Uniaxial pivot joint. Now, pivot is the bony pillar, which is rotating in an arc in a circle or a ring. So, if a bony pillar rotate in a ring, that is the pivot variety. A ring is made up of two things: fibrous tissue and bone that is completed. Partly, major part is the ligament, the smaller part is the bone. That is name is given osteofibrous ring. Osteo mean bone, the fibrous mean the ligament. You can see that annular ligament, which is surrounding the head of the radius, attached to the margins of the radial notch on the ulna. There are two margins of the radial notch, anterior and posterior margin. To the anterior margin, annular ligament attached. To the posterior margin, annular ligament attached. Along with radial notch plus this fibrous ligament, they form a ring. So ring is not totally fibrous ligament, but rather a part bony, which is the radial notch, and along with that attachment of the anterior border and posterior border fibrous ligament. So radial notch, the component of the radial notch is osseous, which means bony, and the annular ligament, which is attached to its margin, is fibrous. So name is given the osseofibrous ring. Osseous fibrous ring in which the bony pillar or the head of the radius rotate, and that is the example of superior radial nerve joint or proximal radial nerve joint. Whereas there is a condition in which another example in the body, which is the in which the ring rotate around the pivot, which means bony pillar is not moving, but the ring rotate around that. And its example is in head and neck, where that is an atlantoaxial joint, which is in which the bony pillar are dense, remain, that is the stationary, and ring rotate around it. So example of the this bony pillar rotating is proximal radial nerve joint. An example of the ring rotating around the pillar is a atlantoaxial joint. So one should know what is do you mean by pivot joint. A pivot joint, a bony pillar or pivot, you can say a bony pillar or pivot, same thing, rotate in the osteofibrous ring or osteofibrous ring rotate around a bony pillar. That is, or there is another option. A ring rotate around the bony pillar or pivot. First is that is the condition in which bony pillar rotate in osteofibrous ring. Example is radial joint. And second is in which the ring rotate around the bony pillar, either atlantoaxial joint. Articular surface include the radial head. Here is shown, this is the radial notch and bony radial notch on ulna, osseous part, and this is the annular ligament attached to the posterior margin and the anterior margin of the notch, and this part is the fibrous component. This one is the bony component. The name is given osseous part and fibrous part. So together they form a ring. This whole is the ring in which this part is bony component, this was the fibrous component. The total name is given to this ring is osteofibrous ring, in which the head of the radius that rotate. This ligament is bit narrow toward the below is the neck, so it prevents the downward dislocation of the head of the radius while carrying the weight. It is bit narrow toward the neck, but not attached to the neck, but become narrow. Include the radial head and osseous fibrous ring of the ulnar radial notch and annular ligament. Radial notch, in which the head of the radius that is the articulating. This is the radial notch on the ulna and head that make an articulation, and this is the articular surfaces. The annular ligament bind it. Fibrous capsule is continue with the elbow and is attached to the annular ligament. Capsule is attached upper margin of the annular ligament and continue with the elbow. So infection of the elbow can easily pass to the superior radial nerve joint and this the humeroradial joint. It is continue with the elbow and is attached to the annular ligament. Annular ligament and quadrate ligament. Annular ligament is stabilizer of the joint. It is strong band that winds around 4/5 of the total head. You can see over here. This is not totally surrounding it. This is the annular ligament. This one. It is 4/5. Then 1/5 is the this one radial notch which complete the ring. That winds around the 4/5 of the total head and hold against the radial notch of the ulna. Attached, it is attached to the interior and posterior margin of the notch. You can see this is the attached to the this anterior attachment. This is the posterior attachment of the ulnar ligament. On inner side ligament is lined with articular cartilage. Here on inner side, it is lined with articular cartilage to prevent the friction rub. A thin layer of the articular cartilage side is the lined with the articular cartilage. Radial notch is also lined with articular cartilage and ligament is also lined with articular. Head of the radius is also lined with articular cartilage. Quadrate ligament, second fibrous band, it runs between radial notch and the upper part of the supinator fossa of the ulna, small ligament, that is attachment. Here is the annular ligament, very good shown, that is the anterior margin of the radial notch. It wind around like this and then attached to the posterior border of the this radial notch on the ulna. Anterior attachment, this is the posterior attachment, is encircle it. Head of the radius is covered with this blue hyaline cartilage to prevent its friction rub. And you can see the ligament is a bit narrow toward the neck, so prevent it downward dislocation of the head. Very good shown over here is that there is a circle and in which a bony pillar is rotating, and this is the term used is the pivot joint. Blood supply by anastomosis around the elbow joint, nerve supply muscles, they are musculocutaneous, median nerve, radial nerve, ulnar nerve. As a rule, the nerve passing around the joint that is supplying. You can see that which three nerves are passing. Ulnar behind the medial epicondyle, median is in front, radial is on the lateral side, and musculocutaneous we change into lateral cutaneous nerve of forearm, pass to the arm. While passing it, give fibers to the this joint. So many times it is asked that how many radioulnar joints that the total uh, radius form how many joints? Just there are four joints which the radius form. Number one is the humeroradial between the head of the radius and capitulum. Number two, proximal radioulnar joint between the head of radius and ulna, that is radial notch on the ulna, upper end. Then third is the mid-radioulnar joint, which is the interosseous membrane which is binding two bone together is also name is given mid-radioulnar joint. And there are two structures which are binding oblique cord and the interosseous membrane. Then is below the inferior radioulnar joint. So radius form four joints together. If only asked that name the joint that is formed by the radius. Number one is the humeroradial. Number two is the proximal radioulnar joint. Number three, mid-radioulnar joint. And third is the inferior radioulnar joint. And even the fifth is also present, which is the radiocarpal joint, which is the wrist joint. Radiocarp. That is a you can add it further as a fifth joint formed by the radius, which is the radiocarpal in the wrist joint. So mid-radioulnar joint is uh, the radius and ulna. They are connected by two syndesmoses. Syndesmosis is the this fibrous tissue that is joining the two bones together. The number one is the oblique cord, number two is the interosseous membrane. Oblique cord is a small band which extend from lateral side of the ulnar tuberosity to the radius, which is extend from the lateral side of the ulnar tuberosity to the radius, a little distal to its tuberosity. That is the it is attached below this is the radial tuberosity. This band is attached below that and lateral side of the ulnar tuberosity. This is the this is the ulnar tuberosity from where this band come down below the radial tuberosity in this manner, and it is direction of this the torsion membrane is distomedially, downward and medially. Its direction is upward and medially, so making an angle of 90 degree in between them. Here is an angle of 90 degree between torsion membrane and oblique cord. By this making angle, a gap is left, which is the through which the common interosseous artery that divide into anterior and posterior through this gap. Then below that is the in between this the gap is left. So oblique cord is extend from lateral side of the ulnar tuberosity to the radius, a little distal to its tuberosity, you can say. To the radius, the radial tuberosity, and this is below that, it is the distal to the tuberosity. Its fibers are right angle to the interosseous membrane. This is the oblique cord is right angle to the interosseous membrane, making an angle of 90 degree. Here is shown is the this is the interosseous membrane, and here is the gap which is present over here, and there is another gap below for passage of anterior interosseous artery which passes backward, because the posterior interosseous artery that vanish or near to vanish, that join with the interior interosseous when it cross back from this gap. And the direction of the fiber of interosseous membrane is distomedially, downward and medially, and it transmits the weight of from radius to ulna. This when it is pushed upward, because the wrist joint is between the radius and carpal bones, and not between the ulna, whereas the ulna contribute in major part is by the in the elbow joint. Lower end is not contributing in wrist joint. It is the radius which is contributing the wrist joint. And hand is attached to the lower end of the radius. When you carry the weight is transmitted from radius, then to the from interosseous membrane down to the ulna. And what is it is also has been seen, a head of the radius also transmit some weight to the capitulum also and to the humerus. But the major weight is transmitting to the in such a way that pass to the ulna, and from ulna to the humerus, and like this onward. From the humerus that is passing on to the cracoclavicular ligament, conoid part and trapezoid part to the uh, clavicle, from clavicle to the central skeleton, that is sternoclavicular joint. From the clavicle, weight is transmitted through the ribs to the vertebral column. Vertebral column then passing down to the hip joint and then to the femur and then to the radius anterior part of the tibia, then pass to the from the humerus to the anterior part of the tibia from condyle and directly fall onto the ground to the head of the talus. Interosseous membrane broad thin structure. Its fiber are directed distomedially, downward and medially between interosseous border of radius and ulna. This is the membrane which is expanding. Membrane is deficient proximally 2 or 3 centimeter distal to the radial tuberosity. An oval aperture at the distal end. There is another oval aperture at the lower end. Conduct anterior interosseous vessel to the back. Membrane. It provides attachment of the deep muscle of the forearm, attachment of the deep muscle of the uh, membrane provides attachment of the deep muscle of the forearm. So it provides an extra space for attachment of muscle in addition to the radius and ulna. Muscle do attach to the radius ulna, but there is less space. So it provides an extra space for attachment of the deep muscle of the forearm in addition to radius ulna. There is additional attachment to the torsion membrane. Provide surface area for attachment of the deep muscle of the forearm. Second role is it is related to the anterior trochleus vessel and nerves and its distal quarter. It is related to the a muscle which is transversely crossing, that is the pronator quadratus from radius to ulna, and in center it is tied to trochleus membrane, pronator quadratus, distal quarter of the trochleus membrane. There is a muscle pronator quadratus. Posteriorly, it is related to the posterior interosseous artery and posterior interosseous nerve. It transmits the weight from radius to ulna. It binds two bones together. Distal radioulnar joint, lower radioulnar joint is uniaxial pivot joint. Articular surface are convex distal head of ulna. You can see over here. This is the head of the ulna, and there is a concavity which is the ulnar notch on the radius. Here the head that articulate. It is similar like proximal radioulnar joint, where head of the radius articulate with the ulnar notch on the ulna. Here it is the uh, head of the ulna which make an articulation with the this ulnar notch on the radius. The articular surface are convex distal head of the ulna, concave ulnar notch of the radius, both connected by articular disc. It is the lower end which is the name is given head of the ulna, concave ulnar notch of the radius, both connected by articular disc. The articular disc connected the lower margin of the ulnar notch on the radius to the base of this stylet process. This is the triangular articular surface. This is attached to lower border of the radial notch, ulnar notch on the radius, and apex is attached to this. It covers the inferior surface of the head of the. This is covering inferior surface of the head of the ulna. Fibrous capsule thick anteriorly and posteriorly, triangular fibrous cartilage that is the attached to the lower border of the ulnar notch of the radius and to the base of the styloid process of the ulna. So this articular cartilage keep the integrity of this joint also. Capsule is also present around this joint anteriorly and posteriorly, that is thick, and interosseous membrane also binding the two bones together, which also anterior posterior interosseous nerves, which are innervation. Movements are two on the mid-radioulnar joint, syndesmosis, pronation, supination. Pronation, what is pronation? It is a movement in which radius is lateral and parallel to the ulna and palm of hand faces upward. Because this movement can be better performed if you put your elbow on the table, fix it, and then perform the pronation and supination. If you move with straight arm, then there is addition of the movement from shoulder also. So it is not the two movements. The total the range of the movement increases by the contribution from shoulder. To avoid the contribution of the shoulder, put the elbow on the table, and this will fix the that humerus, and then it will not be able to add its movement from the shoulder. It will be pure pronation supination. Range of the pronation supination can best be seen by putting the elbow on the table and then do the flexion and pronation supination. So the students usually describing it. A supination is the movement hand faces upward. Pronation is the movement hand facing downward. This is not the definition of supination pronation. Supination pronation is not the movement of hand. It is the movement of the forearm. So you will talk about the reference with the forearm and never say it is the hand facing upward, hand facing downward. It is not movement of the hand. It is the direction of the hand which changes along with pronation when you are performing the supination and pronation. It is the hand position changes and not the primary movement. So by definition, what you will define the supination is a movement in which radius is lateral and parallel to the ulna. That is, both bones they are parallel to each other. And palm of the hand faces now you can say upward because the hand basically attached to the radius. When radius and ulna parallel, hand faces up. That the palm is facing upward. So basically, definition include the that radius is lateral and parallel to the ulna. Both bones are parallel to each other. And interosseous membrane is unspiralized in supination. It is no doesn't undergo spiralization, and that is the it's a normal position you can say interosseous membrane. Elbow elbow should be fixed on the table, and forearm is right angle to the arm to avoid the addition of shoulder joint movement. Power is greater in supination when when you're screwing a nut bolt, then it power of the forearm is more in supination, which are when you tighten the screw, which are tightened by the supination. Muscles. Number one is there is a unresisted movement which means no resistance. You are just performing pronation supination, not screwing the nut or any working on the hand. You just simply perform that we say slow movement. The normal slow movement is under control of supinator, with only contracting, which is sufficient to do the supination in slow movement without resistance. And you are not doing any work with the hand or any force applying. But when you are applying the force, biceps brachii assist in fast movement under resistance. When you can do the forceful work with the hand, uh, and bicep that is responsible for say fast movement. So you are screwing the hand, that is the nut, that is the fast movement. You screw it, and that fast movement is assisted by biceps brachii. In pronation, the it is don't say कि pronation hand is passes downward. Rather, pronation is the radius turn anteromedially and obliquely across the lower part of ulna. Ulna is stationary, keep it in mind, in pronation supination. It is not moving at all because it is fixed by trochlear notch into the trochlea. Ulna is not moving in pronation supination. And never say that ulna is medially going and radius is moving. Ulna is laterally going and the radius is moving medially. Never say. Ulna remain the same position. You can put the finger at the lower end of the ulna and do the pronation supination. You will see that ulna remain there below, that is above your finger. Fix your finger at the lower end of the ulna and radius that is moving across toward the medial side. And ulna is not stationary. So no movement of the ulna in which the only radius, which is the lateral, which is the in pronation radius turn anteromedially and obliquely across the lower part of ulna. This is the pronation. And its proximal end remains lateral to the head. Obviously, the upper end of the radius remain its own position, held by the annular ligament in the radial notch of the ulna, whereas it is the lower end which moves, carrying hand along with it. Obviously, I told you the hand is attached with the radius. This joint basically is between radius and carpal bones. So hand will move along with that. It's proximal. So by definition, what you define the pronation? Radius turns anteromedially and obliquely across the lower part of ulna. Proximal end remains lateral to the ulna. Distal end lies medially and interosseous membrane becomes spiralized. This is the definition of the ulna. That is the so in pronation, radius turn anteromedially and obliquely across the lower part of the ulna. Proximal end remain lateral to the ulna, which is distal and while its distal end lies medially and interosseous membrane become spiralized. Don't say it is now here is shown the pronation and supination. You can note that ulna is stationary. It is not moving during pronation and supination because it is held by the trochlear notch in trochlea and it remains stationary throughout pronation and supination. Lower end is fixed, you can see, and not moving from its place. In supination, ulna is parallel to the radius and interosseous membrane is unspiralized. That here is the that is straight in normal position. Another point to note is the ulna is not articulating with the carpal bones. The basically this joint is between radius and the carpal bones. So hand obviously will rotate along with the when the radius is rotating and never say that palm facing down is the pronation and palm facing upward is the supination. It is the hand which is secondarily moving along with the movement of the radius. Upper end of the radius remain its own position and on lateral side of the ulna, whereas the lower end of the radius you can see move across the lower part of the ulna. Upper half of the radius is not crossing the radial ulna, lower half is crossing over the ulna. When there is crossing of the ulna on the radius on the ulna, interosseous membrane becomes paralyzed or tightened. And another point to note is radius is not touching the ground. It is total movement is 150 to 160 degree, and due to the tightening of the interosseous membrane, it does not permit its further degree beyond the 150 or 160 degree, and it becomes paralyzed and tightened. And will in supination along with that. So by definition, supination is the in which the radius and ulna parallel to each other and hand obviously secondarily upward. Whereas in pronation, the because the radius move across the ulnar lower part, this is the definition of pronation. And secondarily, you can say the hand that move downward. Hand can be turned through 140 to 150 degree. Yeah? Because this is the dorsal membrane become taut and does not permit further movement and to touch the ground, lower end of radius. Muscle pronator quadratus that is responsible for rapid movement of pronation and against resistance. If there is, you are doing one forceful work, the pronator teres that assist and against resistance by pronator teres. Just like we said that the supinator in slow movement, in rapid movement, the biceps brachii engage this pronator biceps brachii and the supinator role. Similarly, pronator quadratus added in rapid movement and in against resistance by the pronator teres, just like biceps brachii, which work in resistance. And normal movements, rapid movement can be performed by pronator quadratus. Gravity also assists if you, in pronation. Next is the clinical aspects of the elbow joint. Tennis elbow. Elbow tendinitis is painful musculoskeletal condition that follow repeated use of superficial extensor muscle of the forearm. The musculoskeletal condition, which mean medial epicondyle that become its periosteum becomes swollen, and that we say musculoskeletal that follow repeated use of superficial extensors of the muscle. In any movement in which you are repeatedly using the extensor muscle of the forearm, pain is felt at the lateral epicondyle and radiate down to the posterior surface of the forearm along with the muscle. Repeated forceful flexion and extension of the wrist could strain the attachment of the common extensor tendon, producing inflammation of the periosteum of the lateral epicondyle. The covering of the periosteum, which is the covering of the lateral epicondyle, become inflamed. Second condition is dislocation of the elbow joint. So it also occurs because those playing tennis ball game, so because they are in pronation and that is putting the throw on the ball so repeatedly and then that become painful. So name is given tennis elbow, tennis ball, related to the tennis game of the tennis, in which the repeated what the basic thing is that this is the use of the superficial, repeated use of the superficial tensor. In which movement? When you are playing tennis. So name is derived from that. Dislocation of the elbow. Posterior dislocation of the elbow may occur when person fall on their hands with their elbow flexed. It may also occur due to a blow that drives ulna posteriorly. It drives the ulna posteriorly. Here is shown the tennis elbow, which with reference to the tennis game, when there is a repeatedly movement of the extensor muscles of the forearm, and due to repeated movement, it causes the inflammation of the periosteum of the lateral epicondyle, and that by pulling it, causing the severe pain at the point of the medial epicondyle and refer to the posterior surface of the this forearm, and this injury to the common extensor tendon occur. And this movement, this is due to repeated movement, and that is in tennis game what is seen, and another forceful movement, screwing the nuts and other things that causes repeated movement lead to injury to the tendon and inflammation of the periosteum. These are extensor group, common extensor tendon, which is attached to the epicondyle of the medial lateral epicondyle of the injury to the ulnar nerve may occur, causing the numbness of the little finger and weakness of the flexion and adduction of the wrist. The that is the effect ulnar nerve may be affected, and this causes the it supply the one and a half little finger and the middle finger, half of the middle finger and the full little finger. That area become numbness, weakness of the flexion and adduction of the wrist. Student elbow bursitis of the elbow. Subcutaneous olecranon bursa is exposed to injury from abrasion of the skin. There is some crack or cut on the skin, or due to fall from motorcycle, there is a abrasion on the skin when the elbow touching the ground, and from there the infection can enter from this crack and causes the inflammation of the bursa, uh, covering the olecranon. Repeated excessive friction may cause, as students sitting in the library or the on the table, they are causing the excessive friction may cause the bursa to be inflamed. Inflamed bursa may get be infected from the infection derived from the this abrasion of the skin or crack, and a pus may be formed that produces subcutaneous olecranon bursitis. A swelling is seen on the posterior aspect of the elbow, and this is the normal olecranon bursa which has been shown over here, and inflammation of the olecranon bursa that do occur, and that is the name is given olecranon bursitis. This condition, that is the inflammation of the olecranon bursa, is also name given student elbow, because the student they are repeatedly doing the friction rub on the table while writing or sitting, so that causes inflammation of this bursa. Another name is given the student elbow.